The first message that Samuel heard from the Lord was one of judgment on the house of Eli. Eli the priesthood would be taken away from his family, and it would all happen in one day. Eli accepts the verdict and judgment of the Lord. He knows his sons are corrupt and that he has not been able to restrain them. But this is a new beginning, God speaking to the nation through Samuel, the prophet. And many come to seek wisdom from the Lord, from this young man who is in touch with God. So chapter 4 of 1 Samuel begins, "And the word of Samuel came to all Israel." Now Israel went out to battle against the Philistines, who encamped beside Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped in Aphek. Then the Philistines put themselves in battle array against Israel, and when they joined battle, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men of the army in the field. And when the people had come into the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Shiloh to us, that when it comes among us, it may save us from the hand of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh, that they might bring from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted so loudly that the earth shook. Now when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, "What does the sound of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" Then they understood that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp. So the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "God has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for such a thing has never happened before. Woe to us! Who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with the plagues in the wilderness. Be strong and conduct yourselves like men, you Philistines, that you do not become servants of the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Conduct yourselves like men and fight." So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and every man fled to his tent. There was a very great slaughter, and there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. Also the ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. Then a man of Benjamin ran from the battle line the same day, and came to Shiloh with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. Now when he came, there was Eli, sitting on a seat by the wayside, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told it, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the noise of the outcry, he said, "What does the sound of this tumult mean?" And the man came quickly and told Eli. Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were so dim that he could not see. Then the man said to Eli, "I am he who came from the battle, and I fled today from the battle line." And he said, "What happened, my son?" So the messenger answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has been a great slaughter among the people. Also your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." Then it happened, when he made mention of the ark of God, that Eli fell off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died. For the man was old and heavy, and he had judged Israel 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, due to be delivered. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and gave birth, for her labour pains came upon her. And about the time of her death the women who stood by her said to her, "Do not fear, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer, nor did she regard it. Then she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel, because the ark of God has been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband." And she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share this 4th chapter of 1 Samuel. God had declared through Samuel that Eli and his sons would die on one day, and this is the day. The circumstances were that the Israelites had no power against the Philistines. The Philistines had confidence because of the sin within the nation of Israel. They had no confidence in their God, and so they fled in battle before their enemy. First, 4,000 were killed, a big disaster. They think to use the Ark of the Covenant as if they can manipulate God to protect them. What they need to do is to repent before the Lord, not to go and get the Ark of the Covenant. But they go and get the Ark of the Covenant, and they shout, now we're safe. God won't let his Ark be captured, won't he? God can protect his Ark in the hands of the Philistines. But we can't manipulate God. We must humble ourselves before God. The 2 priests, the sons of Eli, accompany the Ark of God as it goes to battle. When the Philistines learn that the Israelites have the Ark, they are fearful, for they know how powerful the God of Israel is. That doesn't mean that they honour Israel. They fight with greater determination. They're not going to be made subject to Israel, even if Israel was able to defeat the Egyptians. "Conduct yourselves like men and fight," is the cry that goes up. And so the Philistines fight, and they have more determination in them than Israel does. Israel flees, and there is another great slaughter. This time 30,000 soldiers of Israel die. The Ark of the Covenant is captured. Hophni and Phinehas die. Eli knows that his sons are wicked and will die, but his heart is for the honour of God. His heart is for the Ark of the Covenant. And when he's told that the Ark is taken, he knows that the covenant is broken. The Ark contains the 10 Commandments. It has the mercy seat. And without the Ark, they are not able to conduct the services on the Day of Atonement, for the Ark has been forfeited. The opportunity of sacrifice has been taken away. And Eli is so distressed he falls, breaks his neck and dies. He'd been the judge of Israel for 40 years, so presumably following on from Samson, who judged for 20 years. And his daughter-in-law is also with child, and she is also distressed by the Ark of the Lord. Although her husband was religious but not godly, it would seem that she was godly, and she is more concerned about the Ark of the Lord than the child that she is bearing. The women say, "You have a son," but all she can think about is, the glory has departed from Israel. The glory has departed from Israel. The Ark of God has been captured. Her son lives, but she also dies. But God is not captured. The children of Israel were looking to the wrong thing. The Ark of the Covenant was a symbol, and they need to relearn the ways of God, to trust in God no matter what happens, and to repent before him. In making a new beginning for the nation, God has taken away the Ark of the Covenant, that the people might look to him alone. Samuel is still just a young man.